Welcome to Driven, the Unscripted Success podcast, with your hosts, Mike Mannino and Nariman Hamden, bringing you insights and stories on achieving personal, professional, and financial success.
Hi, everybody. It's Michael Mannino, and welcome to Driven, Unscripted Success podcast. Today on the podcast, we're interviewing professionals who share their experience and tips with you on how they got to where they're at today. And zooming from the beautiful islands of Naples, Florida, we got Katie Roski. Oh, I said it right before you said it. I'm typically horrible with names. Hi, Kia. How you doing?
I'm great. Thanks for having me today.
Oh, thank you for being on the podcast. I appreciate it. Thanks for taking time out to share all your experiences, your best experiences with the audience. We really do appreciate it. A lot of people get a lot of value out of this. Could you do me a quick favor and tell everybody about yourself, what you do, and how you got to? Well, apparently you're not in Naples right now. You're in San Francisco, right? You got the San Francisco Bridge behind you.
Yes, the Golden Gate Bridge growing out of the top of my head in the screen.
Dual citizenship of Florida and California, right?
Right. Well, Florida resident and California visitor, but I'm in California right now, where I'd love to be a few months a year. So your question is about what I'm doing now, or how I got to this place?
All of it. So just tell everybody where you're at now and how you got to where you're at.
Yeah. Okay. So these days, I work with early stage companies, particularly in the green tech space, meaning that they're companies that are producing products and services that specifically address improving the environment in some way. I'm most interested in ag tech, water, and bioplastics, but I help other types of early stage companies too, particularly if their impact is positive. And deliberately positive. The way I got to this point was by being an entrepreneur myself for over 20 years, and also being deeply engaged in environmental causes, both as a volunteer and as a professional. Before I became an entrepreneur, I did work on Wall Street for 3 years. Went to business school. Then I worked for Kraft Food. So I have a background, an eclectic background in both finance and CPG. And then after my experience at Kraft, I co-founded a company to make radiology workstations for radiologists to review and on a digital basis, CTs, X-rays, and MRIs, which at the time in the early 90s was being done all in analog fashion on film. Even though CTs and MRIs are, have lots and hundreds of images. So we made them less expensive, easy to use, in the ways that we were imitating the way film is read. We did it digitally, and so it was easy for a radiologist to learn how to do that, and they were very affordable compared to what the big companies were doing. We sold that 10 years later, and then I took a deep dive into working in land preservation for several years, and out of that grew an environmental media company called Ecomyths Alliance, which was a consortium of scientists and scientific institutions, mostly from the Chicago region, who all combined science with humor to make it easy to be green. So we did these monthly myth-busting articles, and we had a radio segment. I had a radio segment on public radio once a month with scientists, and we would bust these myths. So the myths were things like that wetlands are wastelands, or that that there's no place for wild animals in this city because Chicago is being overrun by northern mammals, like, well, not overrun, but they were having sightings of bears and wolves and things, and that was a big controversy. So a lot of our myths were about Lake Michigan pollution and electrical appliances and things like that. We even worked with Second City for a while because it was about humor, and we hired a cartoonist. Blah blah blah. Anyway, it was really fun. And after that, I did that for almost 10 years. That was 9 years. And that was followed by becoming the executive director of an international scientific organization called Botanic Gardens Conservation International, which does ecosystem restoration all over the world and is charged with fulfilling the mandates of the Convention on Biological Diversity, which is a UN agreement. It was really, really interesting. And it's London-based. And botanic gardens and universities from all over the world are members of that. And so I got to take a really deep dive into international conservation, which then somewhat incongruously led me to become the head of this incubator in Miami. And then I did that, helping hundreds of companies, both in the university setting and as individuals, especially from Latin America. And after I did that, then I started doing it on a consulting basis, specifically focusing on companies that were doing green technology. My incubator experience in Miami was all kinds of industries. It was across the board. At that time, a lot of people were working on apps of various kinds, many of which are still going strong. It wasn't just that, though. It was all sorts of stuff, like personal mobility and political websites that help people decide who to vote for, and all kinds, just the whole gamut of stuff.
Sounds very diverse.
Media companies. It was really fun.
I like the adding the humor into the doctor's part. That sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was really fun. So that was my zigzagging pathway to where I am now.
Where you're at today.
Yeah. So, it's basically technology and the environment. So that's the simple explanation anyway.
Simple explanation of it. Well, the consulting is a pretty diverse industry, to say the least.
True. That's why I like to focus specifically on early stage companies that are making a difference to the environment.
Awesome. Great. It's pretty noble too. There's a lot of competition in that. What do you do? What sets you apart? What are you good at that other people find challenging? What comes easy to you?
Simplifying the message and simplifying the strategy. Tons of entrepreneurs that I've worked with want to boil the ocean, and maybe eventually they will, but first things have to happen first, right? And inevitably too, and I know this so intimately because this happened to me. Entrepreneurs have difficulty explaining in simple terms what they're trying to do, both to potential investors as well as to potential customers. And so they get better and better at it over time, but at the beginning, I can really help them simplify. And I find that often they resist it because everything is important to an entrepreneur. Every aspect of the decisions they're making and the challenges they're overcoming and the details that they don't want to let go of. And I say to them, you don't have to let go of those details. They are important, but your story has to be simpler. The way that you explain your benefits has to be simpler. So I always, throughout my whole career, have focused on making the complicated simple.
Well, that's huge. The KISS system. Keep it simple, stupid.
Yeah.
Really is, I get it. People put a lot into whatever they do, especially entrepreneurs. We're very driven and focused. It makes perfect sense. But the simpler you can keep it, how do I put this? The simpler you keep it, people will receive it better.
Exactly. If somebody has to think too hard to understand what you're saying, then it's not working. So what I typically say is, look, businesses are layered and they evolve. So when the competitive advantage that you have at the beginning is really, really important, but you need to keep evolving because your competitive advantage needs to keep evolving. So don't try to do everything at once. Hold back some of your ammunition for the next phase. Be aware of who else is out there and what they're doing, but only in the sense that it helps you hone your offering.
Agreed. Give it to them in layers that they want it. There's a lot of engineer types. We do multifamily, and there's a lot of engineer types that want to see everything. I'm like, yeah, no problem. Here it is. And then they take longer to get back to you. But then when they get back to you, you're like, oh, now I understand that. Now I want to invest, or I want to do it, or I want to proceed with it. If you give all the information up front to other people, they're probably going to get confused. If I'm not mistaken.
That's exactly right. Yeah. But then the entrepreneur also is sometimes confused because they realize that to solve the problem that they're trying to solve or meet the need they're trying to meet, it's often multifaceted. So they want to do all of those things at once. Mm-hmm. But instead, you've probably heard of a minimum viable product. Minimum viable product is the first thing that a company introduces that begins to solve the problem and is sellable. But it doesn't necessarily solve the entire problem. So you have early adopters, the people that love to get things that are new to the market. Mm-hmm. And they're willing to take a risk about whether something works or not. And then they'll take your prototype and they'll test it and they'll give you feedback and tell you what's wrong with it, what's right with it. And then you can hone your prototype so that you have something that's sellable, but not complicated. And
not complicated. That's good.
Not complicated.
Right.
Over time, you can add things to it. When we did our radiology workstations, we had 3 major universities teaching hospitals that were helping to alpha test it and beta test it. And they gave us tons of feedback. And we didn't go to market until we had incorporated that feedback and actually made the whole thing simpler. Over time, we got more feedback and then we would do little upgrades. But it was definitely an iterative process. It took a couple of years to get that product ready for market.
Yeah, yes, I agree wholeheartedly. Everything takes time to get into the market. It really does. And patience is a virtue, but do you deal with entrepreneurs that are impatient?
Oh yeah.
You don't definitely have to say anymore.
And that's part of why they want to put everything into the solution right away.
Right.
Because they think it won't sell if it's lesser. There's a company that I worked with when I was running this incubator that created a software. Really, it was an app to schedule soccer pickup games at indoor soccer facilities. And it was just for the players initially. So the players could go online and see that a game was going to be held at 3:00 on Friday or something, and they could sign up for it. And then
the sign up would tell, with 10 guys, or what it was, 5, 6, 7 guys in each team, so that they'd know that if this one's full. It was a very helpful stat, probably.
Exactly. So it was huge because all that was being done manually before that. And these two guys, these two brothers that started it, were soccer players, and they've had this frustration. Well, over time, they added a whole layer for people to accept management of these indoor fields, to accept payment and to manage, their whole customer base. And then over time, they're going to actually provide this for other sports. But they've been extremely successful, and they've been doing collaborations with professional soccer teams. It's really exciting to watch them grow.
Nice. That's awesome. Yeah, it is nice to see something grow. I started a few businesses, and the best way I can describe it is it's like raising a kid. Once you get a kid up and running, he's on his own, and they're the business is running itself, and then the kid is up. I've got kids too, and it was the biggest joy is watching them do their life.
Oh, yes.
That you gave them.
Yeah.
Here's another one I hope you get to enjoy. I just found out I'm going to be a grandpa soon, so that's the next.
Oh, congratulations! Yeah, I have my fingers crossed. One of my sons is married.
It'll happen. Is really the when is the question.
Yeah. Yep.
If someone it seems like you're really good at keeping things simple. What advice would you give somebody to do what you do to make it simpler? What is the advice you would give them to make it easier for them to make it simple?
Oh, that's a great question. So when I was doing Ecomyths Alliance, I did a lot of presentations to scientists because what the goal that we had with Ecomyths is to break through to people who weren't already environmental. So I would hold this workshop for scientists, enabling them to simplify the explanation of their science. And the way that we did it was through improv.
Comedy to that sounds so interesting.
It was so fun. Yeah, I invite scientists up on the stage, and we do these improv games. And one of them was, oh gosh, I had a name for it. I don't remember. But I bring two scientists up on the stage and put them each in a chair, and they each would explain their research in research lingo. And then the other scientist would have to explain to the audience as if the audience were 8th graders the science of the other guy. So they would take turns doing that, and then we would vote regarding who did the best job of explaining in simple terms what the other guy was doing.
That's a great little technique. That's a great little technique to get scientists, because most scientists generally speak over the average person's head.
Yeah, they use lingo, and they use terms and processes and things that people just, unless they're another scientist in that same field, then they don't understand it. Right. And these two scientists would both be environmental scientists, but one would be soils and one would be, insects. So they weren't familiar with each other's terms. So they would have to extrapolate based on, they were like lay people listening to each other's science. So what I tell entrepreneurs is explain what you're doing as if you're telling your grandmother or your 5-year-old, so that you can, it forces you to put yourself in the other person's shoes and realize that they have no background in what it is that you're trying to say. And so it causes you to strip out all that stuff that would confuse them.
I know exactly what you're saying. I unfortunately fall prey to that too. So In
Yeah.
multifamily, what we do is we buy apartment complexes, and then I explain all this stuff that they don't need to know. The cap rates, the area's appreciation rate, historical benefits, this and that, the distance to airports and this and stuff. And then they always come down to what's the investment, what's the return, what's the risk. And if you just explain that to them, they're like, yeah, then now I'm in. That's just
Yep.
over explaining.
Perfect example.
I like I like that exercise though. That is a great exercise to get, you know, having a scientist speak it, we'll call it scientizese, and another scientist trying to explain it to a 5-year-old what he just said. I don't know where you came up with that. That is fantastic.
I don't know, just whenever I did workshops, we did lots of other exercises like that. Like when you tell us, there'd be like 8 people in a circle, and somebody would explain a problem that they were having difficulty marketing in this particular environmental institution to their audience, right? So in a botanic garden, they're trying to explain why it's important to save a certain tree species. Well, so one of the things that one of them came up with is when people are walking through the woods, they just stay on the trail and they have no idea what's going on around them. They have no idea what's being grown, what the healthy plants are, what are the invasives, what are the habitats, et cetera. So somebody introduced that as their problem in one of these workshops. And then people would go around the circle, and the first person after that would propose a solution, and then each person after that would build on that story. Right? So they would it could be crazy, it could be funny, it could be very serious, but each person would build on the story.
Nice.
And at the end of that, I would say, okay, there were a lot of really goofy things that came out of this exercise, but there are some grains of truth or opportunity that came out of this. It's a very weird brainstorming. It's a very weird way to brainstorm. And one of the scientists, actually the marketing person from the Morton Arboretum in Chicago, said that she started, after doing that with me once, she started all her staff meetings with that same exercise.
That's crazy. That's awesome.
It's a problem-solving exercise, but it takes the constraints off, because you can be goofy. You don't have to be serious, and it's often the goofy ideas that have a kernel of excitement and innovation.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. I just love how you mix comedy with it, and sats. I call it satire. Satire is truth in comedy. And so,
yeah. We hired a cartoonist to do a cartoon for every myth we busted. Well, here's one on my mug. It says, we always had one green thing you could do, and this is a kangaroo. Oh, you can't see it. Oh, a kangaroo.
Mm-hmm.
Says the one green thing that we do, we carpool. So it's a kangaroo with a baby in his pouch.
There you go.
Also, when all these wolves and bears and stuff were coming to Chicago, we did a still cartoon of a bear, a wolf, and I don't know, some other big mammal sitting around a campfire, sitting upright, and the campfire is burning. And one of them says, "Should we eat here, or should we go into the city for dinner?" In other words, eat the residents. Anyway, I loved that cartoon. That was particularly good.
I like that. We're going to eat out here. We're going to eat in the city. Sounds like things are going pretty good for you and your businesses. We're looking forward to the future. Wondering how you're creating passive income, or have you ever created passive income before?
Pretty much everything that I've worked on is extremely active, not passive. So, starting a company, running a company, growing a company, as you know, being an entrepreneur yourself, is like 24/7. So passive just isn't even in my vocabulary.
Okay. Sorry to hear that. Maybe I could help you out later on. It's
Well, we can keep
absolutely
talking about that. Your description of what you do is very interesting.
We absolutely love it. And what I've noticed in the podcast, I think I made mention to you before, is a lot of people don't have a way to make money on their money, and it's so detrimental. We've learned this one truth: money makes more on money than you can on labor.
Wow. Yeah.
And all we do is show people a good, safe way of doing it. And it really is amazing. And that's my passion, is to show people how to, because some people are going to be working forever. And that breaks my heart. And especially like doctors and lawyers, doctors themselves, I know a bunch of doctors, they don't know how to invest. They're going to do well, but they could do so much better on a different, alternative form of investing. And my whole focus for the rest of my life is that. I just love doing it. Love showing people, and then they look at me like, "This is crazy." I'm like, "I know. Is it true?" I'm like, "Yes." And they go, "How can I prove it?" I go, "Talk to your accountant." And they call me back and they're like, "Yeah, my accountant said, yeah, this is true." Okay, let's do it. It's fun. It really is.
Very smart.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. What do you got planned for the next 6 to 12 months? What's the rest of your year looking like? What's your game plan?
Oh. Well, I would say just networking, continuing to reach out to green tech companies. I'm particularly interested right now in learning more about bioplastics and bioplastic companies. I think for me, it's a really gut-wrenching thing to even use plastic in my life. Everything from food storage to cosmetic bottles to plastic bags, there's a great company in Fort Lauderdale called 4Ocean, and they just clean up plastic, and then they make one of their revenue models is to make little plastic bracelets and sell those from the stuff.
I saw them. I really appreciate what they're doing. Yeah, that is a great company. That is amazing.
They're really good. So you know about them.
Yeah, they clean up the oceans as much as they can. They find it. They have if I'm not mistaken, a boat-like item, and then they scoop up all the plastics and recycle it.
So
if you're doing stuff like that, congratulations.
Well, even better would be plastic made out of corn husks or cellulose or things that are actually just food waste. And then it reduces the food waste, and it eliminates or replaces, not eliminate, but it does replace petroleum-based plastics. So I'm really, really interested in that. And I'm also particularly interested in and taking a deep dive into aquifers and aquifer recharge in Florida and in Illinois and really all over the world. Groundwater is really being depleted because of overuse and because a lot of wetlands have been destroyed and turned into streams, which dump into the ocean. In Illinois, there were tons of wetlands throughout, like the Chicago area. All of that was channelized hundreds of years ago. It goes into the Chicago River. This is fresh water that comes from.
That we can probably use, right?
It used to go into the wetlands, and then the wetlands would filter the water and would go into the groundwater and replenish it. Now it goes into channels, and those channels, those streams, go into the Chicago River, which goes in the Illinois River, which goes to the Gulf of Mexico. So we're exporting from Illinois the fresh water to the Gulf of Mexico. And in Florida, the same thing has happened because so much of the Everglades has been built upon and turned into farmland, which is a noble use. But in the process, the water has been overused for agriculture, and the water table is going down, and saline from the ocean is encroaching. Yeah, I'm very interested in possible solutions. There are a lot of AI applications now being developed to monitor groundwater levels and water quality, and to anticipate water needs so that it's being allocated fairly and appropriately, and also to try to recharge these aquifers. So those are my big areas of curiosity right now.
Like how you put that, curiosity. That's awesome. Thank you very much. Felicity, how would somebody get in touch with you? How would they contact you if they wanted to talk to you about what you do?
Well, the best way is probably LinkedIn.
Mm-hmm.
I'm Kate Roski on LinkedIn, and apparently my email is available to people on LinkedIn, because I get a lot of emails from people. So I think LinkedIn is definitely the best.
Okay, beautiful. Thank you very much for being on the show. We really do appreciate it, and thanks for sharing your insights.
Yeah, my pleasure. It was fun talking with you.
The pleasure is ours. Thank you very much. We'll let everybody go, and then Mike and Kate out. We'll talk to you guys later. Thanks.
Thanks for listening to Driven, the Unscripted Success Podcast. Want to share your story? Apply to be a guest at drivensuccesspodcast.com/guest.